today, for many people in Europe, they look a bit differently, I guess, on indigenous people and on the term of decolonization, because after the full-scale invasion started in Ukraine, I guess many people just started to realize how deep the colonization in Europe. I wanted to start with a very broad question about how the decolonization practices can actually benefit not only to indigenous people, but to those people who representatives of colonizers. What is it for you? What is the most important part of the process that you started in your practices?
It takes the two, the colonized people and the colonizer. We have to decolonize together. It's the aftermath of those who colonized and those who were the colonizers. We have to talk together to, one cannot do it alone. The Greenlanders and the Inuit cannot do it by themselves, because there was a lot of harm and there were a lot of books and there were a lot of things that happened. Only the colonizers were writing the books. Only the colonizers were telling one side of the story. So we also have to tell our side of the story. But if you take over control of another country and another people, there's a lot of harm that happens when we lose our own language, when we lose our own connection to our traditional knowledge and traditional stories. We need to regain that. As an example, we took back our tradition of tattooing, because the Christianity and white people told us we could not practice because they didn't understand what it was. Now we are taking back practices that were passed down to us. We were not allowed to practice them for 100 years. Now we are taking back what was a tradition from ancient Inuit history. That's part of the process, but there's many, many things that we have to do, especially because the knowledge was cut off, and now we have to educate the younger generation also on what it is to be Inuit and what Inuit values are and what the Inuit language is, what the Inuit practices are. So it's part of a healing on both sides.
How would you start a conversation between you, like Inuit, and people who represent Denmark, for example? How you start this conversation about colonization and decolonization? How would you explain, what do you feel about that?
I'm here to show our movie called Twice Colonized. And it's being shown in Copenhagen, it's being shown at universities, and soon it will be shown all over. And it's a conversation starter between peoples who were affected, not just in Canada, not just in Greenland, but people who were affected through the colonial history or disenfranchisement, abuse, suicide. There's many things you can start the conversation from. It could also just be that people don't understand the word colonized and colonization or reconciliation or reclaiming. There's many things you can talk about, but this process is just a starter. And I'm hoping that there'll be a lot more talk within the country and outside of the country. I think that it's timely. I think Greenland wants to become its own country. And then there's many people who would like to remain in the Danish colony, in the Danish kingdom, and others who would like to determine their own future. One can't just leave the other. We have to both grow up together or work together to achieve this goal. And we are all intelligent people. We all understand the language. It's about moving together. And it's with the filming and interviews and with talking in newspapers, talking at universities. It's just education.
You told that when you went to Greenland to your brother, and you speak with him about your experience of recalling your own story from the childhood.
My brother was.
Your brother, okay, yeah.
And I've asked people who interview me, why was he crying? And I say, you call him, I can give you his number if he can speak to you in your language. He said in that movie, and it shows, that people think that this is wonderful, that we get a chance to go back to our childhood memories or place where we grew up. But to us, and especially because he had a good memory, I didn't recall many things. I couldn't recognize the houses, I couldn't recognize what he was talking about. But this is not a wonderful trip back. It's very sad, and we hadn't talked about our childhood ever until I came back to Greenland, because I moved to the Canadian Arctic. And it was very difficult, but it was very healing also, because we didn't have an easy childhood. And to him, I think also it was part of his healing, the memories that we had. Yeah, very emotional.
Am I right that the most difficult part of the nation that lives in that is colonized is that people just cannot decide by themselves, or it is something more?
They take over your land, they take over your education, they take over your language. So we have to, as children, then learn a foreign language. Not one word is the same. A different way of thinking, a different way of conducting ourselves. And that's what it is to have somebody else come over and take over your land, your way of thinking, your way of doing things. And then I would like to see that we move a step forward. What is my way of thinking? What is my values? And what is it that I would like for my people and our community to have autonomy over in the future? It's a new concept because we've been ruled over for 300 years on the Greenland side, and then on the Canadian side it's been 120 years, where everything is imposed, where all the legislation is imposed in a different language and with different values. Of course, it's not going to take a few years to overcome that. It's going to take many thinkers and many people to move forward to a less colonized frame of mind and a more traditional Inuit. We cannot go back 500 years or 100 years, but how is it that we want to see this world and move forward in this world with a more traditional Inuit value? You're very peaceful people, they're very kind, and we would like to cooperate with other colonizers or other people in a peaceful way without fighting. That's what my elders would like to see me do here when I'm in Denmark, because I'm representing the Inuit of my community. They don't want me to go angry or to be, it's your fault and da. We don't do that. And they don't want me to do that.
Is it possible? I mean, you definitely sometimes feel anger, right?
Absolutely. But I was raised in Denmark. I went to school in Denmark. I get very angry. But what I learned from the Inuit, when the Inuit get angry, they become very quiet. They say nothing. They don't encourage that behavior. Because if you blow flame to that behavior, it becomes bigger. So we don't gossip. We discourage gossip. We discourage ill talk and ill thought, because those are very powerful. Your mind is so powerful that it can run everything. So when you are having ill thoughts, we discourage it by moving away from this. But when we do get angry, we can move the whole earth, because when finally we will show our anger, being angry, we become all our unity, and we are one of the strongest people that could survive in a very, very harsh environment. So we know how to do it. But we don't want to, but we will certainly get very angry if we have to, only if we need to. And people get very afraid of me when I get angry, because then all my focus goes to that. It's not frivolous anger. You don't just give away a little bit here, a little bit there. No, it all becomes narrowed and very focused.
Can you tell me more about your tattoos?
This happened 18, 19 years ago when we were finishing learning how to do documentary or film. And the girl, young woman, said to me, she was sitting across from me, this was almost 20 years ago. She said, I would like Inuit tattoos. She's Inuit. And without thinking, I said, me too. I did not know what I was getting myself into because nobody had tattoos anymore. There was one old woman, 105 years old, with 4 Inuit tattoos. But she died just a few days before we started filming. So we had to go to our grandparents and aunts and uncles, our relations in Nunavut, and gather that information. They would draw pictures of how their grandmothers looked and what they meant and the kind of tattoos that the Inuit had and how they did it and why they did it. And then after 5 years of filming and collecting information, we decided that we wanted to that now, we also went through a ritual where the elder was asking the spirits if it was okay that if we got our tattoos. And when the answer came back and it was yes, then we were permitted. The spirit world says, yes, you can have tattoo without insulting our ancestors and the people. And all of a sudden it's permitted. Like, it takes a lot of strength to have it on your face and on your hands. People literally walk up to me and grab me as if I was an object. In this museum, there are objects that you can touch, and I become an object. But it's because it was so new, but now it's spread all over the Arctic. It's taking back tradition, reclaiming our culture.
Do you think Denmark or other European countries are successful in accepting your practices, your actions, your concept of decolonization?
To some people, I think it's a shock. How dare I say this? Some people cry the whole time. I think it's touching many people, but what I'm thinking is it's a very hard topic to talk about. But the message I am getting is it's very about time. It's now the right time to talk about the pain, about so many Greenlanders not moving back to Greenland, not being able to fit back into their society. I think this is a small way to gain some control of what was taken away, the opportunity